You know what is so brilliant about Goodfellas? It never stops to explain everything. It does not sit you down and tell you step by step how every betrayal happened, who whispered to who set who up, or which private grudge finally became a death sentence. It trusts you to feel the pressure in the room, to notice the little cracks, to catch the strange lines that seem unimportant at first and then start looking very different once you know how the story ends. And one of the best examples of that is Tommy, because when people think about Tommy DeVito in Goodfellas, they usually think about the obvious stuff. They think about the shine box scene. They think about Billy Batts. They think about Tommy's temper, his ego, his need to prove himself every time somebody looked at him the wrong way. And of course, they think about the moment he finally gets whacked. That scene hits hard because it is so abrupt. One second he thinks he is about to be made. The next second he is face down on the floor with half his future blown away. And once that happens, the movie seems to offer a simple explanation. Tommy got clipped because he killed Billy Batts, who was a made guy. End of story. But here's the thing. The deeper you look, the less simple that answer becomes. Because if Billy Batts disappeared the night he had that public confrontation with Tommy, then sure, you could say Tommy naturally became the most obvious suspect. But was it really that obvious inside that world? Was it obvious enough for powerful people to decide with total confidence that Tommy was the one who had to die, or did somebody help that conclusion along? Did somebody in Tommy's own orbit finally decide that enough was enough and quietly tip the scales against him? That is where the story gets really interesting. Because if you pay attention to the movie, and if you think about the real-life men behind these characters, Goodfellas starts to feel less like the story of a hothead who finally got what was coming to him, and more like the story of a man who was tolerated, excused, and protected for years until the wrong person finally decided he was not worth protecting anymore. And that raises the real question. Who is the snitch that brought down Tommy in Goodfellas? Because the answer is not some random outsider. It is not the cops. It is not some mysterious informant in the background. The answer, once you follow the clues, may be a lot closer to home. In fact, it may be the very man who had spent years calling Tommy one of his own, Paulie. Now let's slow down for a second, because this is one of those ideas that sounds too neat if you say it too quickly. You have to build it properly. Everybody knows Billy Batts is the central problem. Billy comes home from prison, walks into the lounge, gets a little too comfortable, starts teasing Tommy, and before long, Tommy is boiling. The whole room can feel it. Billy is smiling, relaxed, acting like Tommy is still the same kid from years earlier, still somebody he can joke on, still somebody he can knock down a peg in public. And Tommy, being Tommy, cannot let that go. That is the first thing people always get right about the scene. Billy insults Tommy, and Tommy eventually kills him. That part is obvious. But what is less obvious is the question of who would actually connect Tommy to Billy's disappearance afterward. The movie makes it look easy at first. Billy insults Tommy in front of witnesses. Tommy storms out furious. Later he comes back. Billy vanishes. So naturally you think, well, of course people would suspect Tommy. Who else would they suspect? But the more you think about the culture of that world, the less automatic that becomes. Billy Batts is not afraid of Tommy. That is important. Billy is a made guy. He knows his status. He knows he is protected. He knows that Tommy, loud as he is, violent as he is not supposed to touch him. In Billy's mind, Tommy is annoyed, maybe dangerous in a general sense, but still not stupid enough to cross that line. And if Billy himself does not seem to take Tommy seriously as a threat, why would everyone else instantly assume Tommy killed him? That is not such a simple leap. In fact, the movie quietly supports this when Paulie later asks Henry whether he knows anything about Billy Batts, because Billy's people have been leaning on him about it. That line matters. It suggests Billy's crew is looking for answers. They are asking questions. They are applying pressure. But it also suggests they do not already know the answer. If they knew for sure Tommy had done it, that conversation would look very different. There would not be uncertainty. There would be retaliation. So if the people closest to Billy were still asking around, still busting balls, still trying to figure it out, then somebody had to help narrow their attention. Somebody had to make Tommy the answer instead of just one possibility among many. And that is where Paulie starts to come into focus. Because once you look at Tommy through Paulie's eyes, the logic becomes brutal. Tommy is not just one of the boys. Tommy is a problem, a recurring problem, a profitable problem sometimes, a loyal problem sometimes, an amusing problem sometimes, but always, always a problem. He is impulsive, disrespectful, uncontrollable, and reckless in ways that make life harder for everyone above him. He is the kind of guy who turns a neighborhood dispute into a crisis and then acts like everybody else is being dramatic when the consequences show up. The movie actually tells us this over and over again if you listen carefully. Paulie warns Henry about Jimmy, yes, but then he warns him about Tommy in a different way. Jimmy takes chances. Tommy is crazy. Jimmy is an earner. Tommy is a cowboy. Those are not the same category of criticism. One is about risk, the other is about temperament. Jimmy may be dangerous, but Jimmy is useful. Tommy, on the other hand, has something to prove every single time he enters a room, and that kind of man is exhausting to protect. That matters, because the mafia does not function like a family in the warm, sentimental sense people sometimes imagine. It functions like a machine, and machines do not like unstable parts. They tolerate them for a while if they are useful, if they are feared, if they can be pointed at enemies, if they bring in money, if they can be managed. But once the instability starts threatening the larger structure, the machine starts looking for a way to remove the part. Tommy spends the entire movie acting like a man daring his own side to get sick of him. And the movie gives us little moments that feel almost throwaway until you realize they are building a pattern. There is the restaurant owner, Sonny, terrified of Tommy after Tommy bullies him, refuses to pay, and roughs him up for no real reason. Sonny goes to Paulie because what else can he do? He is scared. He is frustrated. He is begging for help. And Paulie, instead of being shocked, sounds tired, almost resigned. Tommy is a bad kid, he says, a bad seed. That phrase is important. Not hot-headed, not emotional, not misunderstood, a bad seed. That is not the way you talk about a man you expect to build a future around. That is the way you talk about a problem you already know will end badly. And then comes one of the most revealing little exchanges in the whole movie. Paulie says, almost sarcastically, "What am I supposed to do? Shoot him?" And Sonny shoots back, "Yeah, that would not be a bad idea." It is darkly funny in the moment, but it also does something else. It plants the possibility out loud. It turns the unthinkable into something people have already begun imagining. Tommy is no longer just a troublesome guy. He is a candidate for removal. Now, if that were the only clue, maybe you could dismiss it, but it is not the only clue. There is also that strange scene in Janice's apartment, the mistress apartment, the one that sounds so ordinary the first time you watch it that you barely register it. Henry is staying there instead of going home to Karen, and Jimmy and Paulie show up to talk some sense into him. Paulie tells him he has to go back to his wife. Divorce is not an option. Appearances matter. Then he says something that sounds minor but lands strangely if you pay attention. He says he knows how to talk to her, especially to her. Now, on the surface, you could hear that and think, fine, he means he knows how to handle Karen. He knows how to calm her down. He knows how to speak to the wife of one of his guys and keep the domestic mess from spilling into public life. That alone would make sense. But the line feels more loaded than that, because the movie has already shown Karen as someone who notices things. She sees the trunk getting hosed out. She smells death before anybody admits what happened. She understands more than people give her credit for. And if Paulie has a special relationship with Karen, whether emotional, personal, or simply private, then she becomes a source of information too. She becomes somebody who can tell him what Henry is doing, what she has seen, what she suspects, and maybe what Tommy has let slip around them. That matters because mob worlds do not collapse only because of dramatic confrontations. They collapse because of talk, pillow talk, angry talk, drunk talk, careless talk, the wrong thing said in the wrong room to the wrong person at the wrong time. And Tommy is exactly the kind of man who talks too much once he thinks he is safe. The movie tells you that too. After they kill Spider by mistake, Tommy keeps talking. He talks in the car. He talks while they are disposing of the body. He talks like silence is physically impossible for him. Henry even snaps at him about his mouth. And that is not just about being annoying. That is about danger. Guys like Henry understand that in this life, your mouth can kill you long before a gun does. Tommy also cannot resist showing off what he knows. When they are digging the grave, he starts saying this is not the first time he has done something like this. That line is huge. It sounds like swagger, but swagger is often confession-wearing cologne. Men like Tommy think talking makes them look hard, but what it often does is create memory. It gives people details. It creates a pattern others can piece together later. And if Tommy was talking like that around the wrong people, or around people who later talked to Paulie, then Paulie would not need a formal snitch report. He would just need enough pieces to form a conclusion. Enough to know this kid is spiraling. Enough to know the Bats situation is not a misunderstanding. Enough to know Tommy is becoming too risky to carry. There is another reason Paulie makes sense as the one who tipped the scales. He had motive. A real boss does not think like Tommy. He does not think in terms of bruised pride and immediate revenge. He thinks in terms of balance, stability, money, relationships between families. Billy Bats is not just a dead man. He is a dead-made man from another family. That means the problem does not stay local. It becomes political. It threatens the peace. It threatens business. It threatens Paulie's own standing with people far above the level of a neighborhood argument. And that means Paulie has to do something. He cannot protect Tommy forever if protecting Tommy starts endangering everyone else. At that point, giving Tommy up quietly or indirectly stops looking like betrayal and starts looking like management. That is the part civilians often miss about mob stories. The worst betrayal usually does not come from enemies. It comes from your own side deciding you are too expensive to keep alive. And Tommy becomes expensive. Billy Bats is one reason, but not the only reason. The movie hints that Tommy has been causing trouble for a long time. He frightens civilians. He embarrasses the crew. He creates unnecessary heat. He cannot control his impulses. Even when things are going well, he still acts like he is chasing some invisible insult. He needs to dominate every room, answer every slight, avenge every laugh. That kind of man is entertaining until he starts putting serious money and serious relationships at risk. Then he becomes disposable. And now the story starts coming together in a way that makes Paulie's role feel almost inevitable. Imagine the pressure after Billy disappears. Billy's people want answers. Questions start moving around. Old grudges and suspicions start resurfacing. Tommy's behavior is already on record in a dozen other ways. Paulie has seen enough. He may not need a courtroom case. He may not need perfect proof. He just needs to know what outcome best protects the larger structure. And in that calculation, Tommy loses. What makes this even colder is that Paulie does not have to stand up in a room and say, Tommy did it. That is not how power like that works. He can signal, he can confirm, he can fail to deny, he can stop shielding, he can let the right people hear the right thing, he can allow the story to settle around Tommy, because that is the solution that serves everyone above Tommy's level. That is why calling Paulie the snitch feels both correct and slightly misleading. We hear the word snitch and imagine a weak guy whispering to the cops. But in this world, the real snitch is often the boss who decides which truth gets to live. Paulie does not have to panic, confess, or betray in a dramatic way. He just has to stop protecting Tommy. He just has to let the conclusion happen. And once that happens, Tommy is finished. That also helps explain the sheer finality of Tommy's death. There is no negotiation, no appeal, no warning. He is summoned under the most flattering pretense imaginable, the promise of being made, and then he is erased. That is not just revenge. That is a controlled solution. That is what happens when powerful people are no longer debating your value. And if Paulie was the one who helped make Tommy legible as the right sacrifice, then the entire ending becomes even darker, because it means Tommy was not just killed by rival outrage, he was abandoned by his own house. That fits Goodfellas perfectly. The whole movie is really about how seductive this life looks from the outside and how merciless it becomes the second you stop being useful. Everybody talks about loyalty, family, respect, honor, but when the pressure comes, those words start looking very fragile. Henry eventually rats to save himself. Jimmy starts killing people to protect his freedom. Paulie protects the structure before he protects the individual. The system does not reward love, it rewards survival. And Tommy, for all his violence, never really understands that. He understands fear. He understands humiliation. He understands status in the short term, but he does not understand structure. He does not understand when a line is bigger than his ego. He does not understand that a made man in another family is not just another loudmouth in a bar. And most of all, he does not understand that the guys laughing with him today may decide tomorrow that they can live very comfortably without him. That is why the clues in the movie matter so much. They are not random little details. They are signs of a man being evaluated, complained about, tolerated, and slowly moved from asset to burden. Sonny fears him, Henry scolds his mouth, Paulie calls him a bad seed, Karen is close enough to dangerous knowledge, Billy's disappearance creates outside pressure. Tommy keeps generating reasons to be sacrificed. By the time he walks into that room to be made, the decision has probably been emotionally made for a long time. So, who was the snitch that brought down Tommy in Goodfellas? If you mean who helped point the finger, who stopped the protection, who likely let the truth settle where it needed to settle, then the answer is not some random witness and not some cop in the shadows. It is Paulie, not because he hated Tommy in some simple personal way, not because he suddenly grew a conscience, but because Tommy had become too reckless, too loud, too politically costly, and too hard to defend. And that is what makes his end so perfect for this movie. Tommy does not die only because he killed Billy Batts. He dies because Billy Batts was the moment his own side could finally justify letting him go. The murder gave people the reason. Tommy's whole pattern of behavior gave them the comfort. In other words, Billy's death may have signed the paper, but Paulie may have been the one who finally mailed it. And that is the dark genius of Goodfellas. The most important betrayal in the story is not shouted, not confessed, not even fully shown. It is buried in tired conversations, strange lines, old complaints, private access, and one boss quietly deciding that a bad seed has finally become bad business. That is how men like Tommy really go down. Not only because their enemies want them dead, but because one day their own people stop wanting them alive.